Well, she's done it again. The Queensland Premier has given her Chief Health Officer, Jeanette, outright power to keep the border closed to 5 million Sydneysiders. Maybe Jeanette should be the person that stands to be elected tomorrow because she is running Queensland. Again, no balancing the ledger between the real risk of virus spread and the $3 billion annual hit to the economy from stopping Sydneysiders spending in Queensland. That's what it costs. And Anastasia Palaszczuk was not budging.
I will accept the advice of Dr. Young. Now, Dr. Young has stood Queensland in really good shape. We've had no community transmissions now for a long, long time, and Queenslanders have done the right thing and we have seen no community transmission. So, as I said, I will accept the advice of Dr. Young, and that is exactly what I did today. I kept my commitment. I'm honest with the people of Queensland. That is what I said I would do, and that is exactly what I've done. I've accepted her recommendations to me, lock, stock and barrel.
And lock, stock and barrel is basically code for the economy doesn't count. Jobs and livelihoods do not rate. It's not just unreasonable, it is unnecessary, it is hurtful, and it is shockingly parochial and totally out of whack with what the Chief Medical Team in Canberra has recommended. Sydney is not defined as a hotspot. Young has classified all of Sydney, that's 32 local government areas, as a hotspot, despite only 3 local government areas dealing at the moment with clusters. It's Jeanette Young's ridiculously stringent 28-day free period of mystery cases that has stopped this from happening. And why it's inconsistent is the fact that you grab people who return from overseas, you put them in a hotel, not for 28 days. You do that for 14 days. Sometimes during this pandemic, we've done it for less. But it's 28 days if you're south of the border. One mystery case with 3 other contact infections only a few days ago is why Sydney is considered a hotspot by Queensland Health. And that is madness.
If it's an unlinked case, so New South Wales does not know where it came from, then yes, that would trigger a discussion about closing that local government area. There's nothing hard or fast, unfortunately, about this pandemic. We're 10 months in and we are still learning about this virus. There are so many variables here that we have to work through time and time again. That's really important.
Someone needs to tell this woman that Sydney itself is not a local government area. There are 32 of those in the one metropolitan region. But worse still, Jeanette Young is also concerned about the now elaborate hotel quarantine operations.
We are pursuing a suppression strategy. We always have been. We are allowing people to come into our state who are potentially carrying the virus. That's why we have quarantine. So our borders do get crossed from international places, and now the world's at over 43 million cases, 1.2 million deaths. So we know that we will see more cases in hotel quarantine. That's a risk. We have not had a breach here in Queensland from our hotels due to the absolutely magnificent work of our police service in this state. We have seen breaches in Melbourne, we've seen them in Sydney, and we've seen them in Auckland. So we know that's a risk. So it's always been a suppression strategy. It's never been an elimination strategy.
That is not a risk. Getting in your car this afternoon, driving an hour is a risk. Hotel quarantine systems are run by police and the ADF, and often, in the New South Wales context, medical staff. But Young is using Victoria's shoddy attempt 7 long months ago as a benchmark for concern about a hotel quarantine. It's appalling judgment, and I've got to say, as far as Anastasia Palaszczuk is concerned, hopeless leadership. Life is not risk-free. The future of this pandemic cannot be risk-free. Each state and territory needs to share the where, accept the risk, and allow their people to work and live. And Federal Nationals MP and Emergency Management Minister David Littleproud put it perfectly today. This is from a Queenslander.
Chief Medical Officer is being used as a political pawn in Queensland. The science has not been put out there. Now, the APPHC has made recommendations aplenty about having a hotspot definition. That would make sense. This is what I think needs to come out of this COVID-19. There needs to be new thinking about federation. 120 years ago, there was lines put on a map. We cannot get back to the parochialism of that. The world's moved past that. It's evolved past that. I'm a proud Queenslander. We love toweling up New South Wales, every state of origin. But let me tell you, we are one nation. And what's important here is that we back ourselves and we back each other, whether they be in Queensland, New South Wales or Victoria, with science. And we get some consistency. And that's what the leadership of the Prime Minister is trying to achieve through the definition of a hotspot. That we're all singing off the same hymn sheet, like we're trying to with warning systems for bushfire. This is just common sense. And this means that we can keep the economy going.
He's dead right. The Prime Minister, from advice taken from the Chief Medical Officer in Canberra, wanted the state and territory leaders to talk about hotspots. Anastasia Palaszczuk, 2 national cabinets ago, would not even discuss it. I don't want to talk about it. Like a petulant 10-year-old child. And what makes this even more ridiculous is that if Sydneysiders spend 14 days in country New South Wales, they can then enter Queensland. Now, how police can possibly check and prove that you've spent 14 days in the bush, not 1 or 2, is beyond my understanding. Good luck with that. This afternoon, Qantas boss Alan Joyce also described the decision as, quote, frankly ridiculous. There are full flights destined to arrive in Queensland next week that have now been cancelled. And business leaders throughout Queensland, especially the coast, have loudly condemned today's decision, as they should. Given the fact that Palaszczuk won't show any ounce of discretion over this outrageous 28-day mystery case edict, the chances of anyone from Sydney or Melbourne getting to Queensland in December are negligible. In effect, the Queensland Premier has just killed Christmas for hundreds of thousands of families, not just in New South Wales and Victoria, but in Queensland too, who are desperate to see their families and their grandchildren. We have learned a hell of a lot during this pandemic, but most of all, we've learnt that some state leaders will act in their own electoral interests before the interest of Australia, and that stinks.